This is the coming revolution in higher consciousness. Listen now to Elizabeth Clare Prophet, educator, author, and authority on the most exciting story of our time, the coming revolution in higher consciousness. This week, you'll hear the final segment of The State of Education in America, an eye-opening expose by Elizabeth Clare Prophet. In parts 1 and 2, Mrs. Prophet analyzed problems in education and uncovered some startling facts about textbook content and the effects of TV. Today, Mrs. Prophet will take up the question, how do we solve the problems in American education?
As far as I'm concerned, television presents the most serious challenge of all to education and to the soul of the child. The latest figures from A.C. Nielsen show that children ages 2 to 17 watch an average of 23 to 25 hours of television each week. These figures show that the average American child spends more time watching TV than he does in school. Why do parents and teachers stand for it? Are they hypnotized? Why don't schools just assign more homework and flunk those that don't do it? I'll tell you why. They're afraid to take the blame for flunking children. But if the schools won't flunk them, life will. Better they learn the path of initiation early and that it is possible to fail tests in school and in life. The 1990 National Assessment of Educational Progress math test, the first state-by-state comparison of math achievement, found that the public schools in all states were doing a poor job teaching math. But the states with the highest level of math proficiency had the lowest percentage of students who watched TV 6 or more hours a day. Likewise, the states which had the lowest levels of math proficiency had the highest percentage of students who watched 6 or more hours of TV a day. The truth is, TV is taking the place of parents. The children go to the TV for love, for feelings, for emotions, for comfort. It's the giant enemy pacifier. You know what? If you plug your kids into the TV, you're going to get TV kids. Not human or divine beings, but TV beings. Having children and rearing them is a lifetime calling. Play your role. Don't make the TV a surrogate parent. Television viewing also contributes substantially to obesity. Why? Well, first of all, children just sit there and watch TV. They're totally inactive. If you have nothing to do, you get into oral stimulation. You want to eat and drink. And what do you eat and drink? Junk food and soda pop and stuff that's a lot worse. TV decreases creativity. A recent study by a team of Canadian researchers found that TV decreases creativity 20% in adults and children. The team studied the impacts of TV on an isolated town that only recently began receiving television. They were able to collect data before and after TV came to town. Dr. Brandon Centerwall, a psychiatrist known internationally for his analysis of TV's role in crime and violence, remarks, "It's interesting that this 20% loss in creativity corresponds to our 20% decline in average SAT scores in the past 20 or 25 years. Such a decline could have grave consequences for our nation." According to Centerwall, a 20% decline in creativity could mean ceasing to be a first-class technological power. A recent study by the Mental Health Association also found that television influences the brain. The association said that we use more brain power to eat than we do to watch TV. Watching TV is one of the most effortless things we do, and therefore we're not strengthening the working of our reasoning or intuitive powers. They also found that when we watch TV, the pattern of brain waves we emit are similar to those emitted when we dream. This is very dangerous. It's almost as though TV were hypnotic, putting us into a dream state where we cease to distinguish from reality and unreality. We all know what it's like waking up from a bad dream. We were absolutely certain that it was really happening to us. That's how children react to TV. They enter that tube. They become part of the scene. And when they back off from it, and they're not watching TV, they will outplay the emotions that they have witnessed on TV. They have internalized them. They have not said, I'm now waking up when I turn the TV set off. They carry the soaps or the movies or the rock videos with them. There's no clear line of reality and unreality when watching TV. And that's even concerning the best of films, because a film is a space you enter into that is not real for a certain amount of time. And if all of your time is spent doing this, you're spending more time in the dream state, in the unreal state, hence the astral plane, than you are in actuality of life. TV characters resolve their conflicts in 22 minutes. This creates the false expectation of quick resolution to problems in the minds of children who may be frustrated that they cannot solve their problems so fast. They may become hopeless. They may give up. They cannot adjust to the fact that in the real world, life doesn't work that way. Television teaches that the immediate satisfaction of wants is more important than delayed gratification from hard work. Neil Postman, professor of communications at New York University, says, immediacy is a major message of television. Commercials tell us that every single problem is solvable quickly through this drug or that detergent. This, of course, tends to bring into disrepute the whole idea of delayed gratification on which education is based. You work hard now for future achievement. Television is undermining the basis of our civilization. Professor Postman says that our ability to build a civilization is based on our capacity for abstract thought. He argues that television is reversing our ability to think in abstract terms, and as a result, it is a de-civilizing technology. He says that there would be a much smaller loss of the ability for abstract thought if TV simply supplemented reading. But he says when television replaces reading, it becomes a cultural catastrophe. You do not have abstract thoughts when you are watching TV because you are watching images. You're watching scenes, you're watching people, you're listening to what they're saying. So all you are doing is taking in a belt of words and another belt of emotional impressions. You do not have to draw from life, observe, and then in your own mind think of solutions by logic, by abstract thinking. Abstract thinking is the ability to extract from a situation the essentials, the components, the geometry of it, if you will, and then to put it together in a different way to solve a problem. Abstract thinking gives us ingenuity, invention. We see a need for a machine to do this and that. Because we know about machines, we can create a machine that performs a certain service that we need. Inventors have minds that are able to put together the missing links of what science, what society needs in order to move ahead. All of that is lost when you simply tune into two belts, words and emotional experiences, and you keep following it along and following it along in the highs and lows of what the players are doing and experiencing. Television viewing is habit forming. If you are a parent with children, the first thing you must do is to get control of the television in your house. If you can't monitor the TV set 24 hours a day, you can buy and install a lockbox that blocks the flow of electricity to the TV. Once it is plugged into an outlet, the power is controlled by the turn of a key. There are similar devices to control VCRs and Nintendo games. This is a word of caution about VCRs. Some parents think the VCR is harmless or even beneficial. The children can watch wholesome videos like Walt Disney movies, and they're usually well behaved while they're watching. In fact, many parents use the VCR as a babysitter and a disciplinarian. If the child is restless or cranky, they pop a cassette into the VCR, and peace returns to the household, and they can attend to the things they want to do as parents. The danger of doing so is that children may not learn to deal with boredom or frustration or acquire the skills they could have if they weren't watching a video. Marie Wynn, author of The Plug-in Drug, TV, Children, and the Family, says, "There is a greater danger in using video as a babysitter. It interferes with socialization, the long and tedious process that teaches children the rules of acceptable behavior and transforms those lovable but exhausting bundles of primitive energy into civilized members of society." She says this process involves years of tiny daily lessons, endlessly repeated. When parents use video to solve child-rearing problems, their opportunities to teach those lessons are diminished. They could end up with kids they can't control and who can't control themselves. Now, I think the problem with a VCR is just as great as the problem with watching TV and whatever is put on it. Just because you carefully select programs or films for your children does not stop the process of destroying the child's capacity for abstract, creative thinking. It doesn't stop the process of destroying the child's ability to image, to imagine. It is occupying the child's mind for so many hours when the child is not engaged in a real-life situation. And I think it's tragic that when parents who don't see their children that much, all of us have to work, all of us have responsibilities, that when we get together with our children, we put on a movie and watch it together and say that that's been family time. I think it's a cop-out on family planning of the best kind when the children are in those stages of development that change every month of their lives. They have new sensitivities. Those who don't have children should want to work with children also, to teach them your skills, to let them watch you while you're working, to observe you in that apprentice fashion. So I believe that videos should be selectively used for movies that teach a very important moral lesson, and that we should not overdo that VCR at all. We should get into a real heart exchange with our children, and by being with them for extended periods in the outdoors or in-house, wherever you are, whatever the season, children will finally unfold and be able to tell you some of their innermost problems or deepest wonderings or fears about life. They aren't just going to spit this out in a 30-minute situation that you have time to give a child. It takes constant companionship and nurturing and the establishment of trust and caring and love and giving children lessons about everything that's going on in life. Things are constantly happening. You see on the news a lot of subjects to talk about. Why do these things happen? Why do earthquakes happen? Why are these terrible things happening around the world? Give them an education in politics, because it comes down to simple power plays that children can understand. Reduce what's going on the planet to an understanding that children can gain. Don't shield your children from reality, or they will not be able to face it when they are adults. Some mothers don't want their children to see the news. I say they must see the news. This is part of what happened in their lifetime. I remember World War II, and I experienced it from the year I was born in 39 through 45. So that was the first 6 years of my life. And I remember that war clearly because my parents did not shield it from me. And it made a lasting impression on me and taught me the seriousness of life, what could happen again, what my mission had to be. Children cannot live in incubators. They cannot live in a sterilized environment. The time you have with your children, you are teaching them problem solving. You may not be there when some great calamity happens in their house or in their city. You may not be an embodiment, but you'll be inside of them, reassuring them, and they'll remember your comforting words and the prayers you taught them and the Bible stories you read to them when they went to sleep at night instead of having them on the TV set until they fell asleep. Children need everything you can give them of all the experience you have in the path, because one fine day, they're 18 years old and they're no longer yours. They're on their own. And the door has shut to your influence. And whatever you've had to say until that time, they will carry with them the rest of their days, for good or for ill. And that is when we count the sins of omission and can wish we would have done better, or we say to ourselves, I've done the best I could, I've given my all, now it's up to the individual soul, to the karma, and to their choices. But I know I've done my job. I hope no one here will continue making the karma of neglect, to neglect either your own children, your grandchildren, or children in the community who need a good example and loving hearts who will help care for them and rear them. I'd like to talk to you now about teaching methods and solutions. Even if we were to get rid of the public schools, lousy textbooks, and television, we would still be left with a question of what is the best way to teach our children. Should we go back to basics, or should we be educating the whole child? The debate began with the ideas of Jean-Jacques Rousseau, the French philosopher, 1712 to 1778. Rousseau thought that education should encourage self-expression and avoid harsh discipline and regimentation. He thought that intellectual growth should be slowed down and that a child should be encouraged to demonstrate his own interest in a subject and to ask his own questions. He should not have a teacher until puberty. This is deadly poison. Hopefully, he would accept a free and reciprocal contract friendship with his teacher. Contract friendship. No sense of student-teacher, no sense of master-disciple. Teacher and pupil on equal terms here, who could then help him uncover what he needs to know about society. Well, John Dewey picked up the ideas of Rousseau and put them to work in American schools. And they're the weeds in the garden that have to be rooted out. Dewey was the primary force behind progressive education in this country. In his book, Schools of Tomorrow, he wrote, "Development emphasizes the need of intimate and extensive personal acquaintance with a small number of typical situations, with a view to mastering the way of dealing with the problems of experience, not the piling up of information." This is the root of the argument that content should be removed from our schools and replaced with creative thinking skills. Dewey's philosophy was that through small, personal, everyday experiences, they would be able to figure out the problems of life. Dewey not only based his ideas on Rousseau, but also on the experimental psychology of Wilhelm Wundt, who taught at the University of Leipzig in Germany. In the Leipzig connection, Paolo Leoni and Lance J. Klass show how Wundt's ideas crossed the Atlantic and became enshrined in America's schools. Wundt was the founder of experimental psychology. He asserted that man is devoid of spirit and self-determinism, and he set out to prove that man is the summation of his experiences. American and European students flocked to Wundt's laboratory at Leipzig to study this new psychology. And they returned home to become the heads of departments of psychology and the dominant force in psychology for a generation. A man named G. Stanley Hall was one of Wundt's students, and he taught John Dewey when Dewey attended Johns Hopkins University. Dewey adapted the Wundtian psychology and extrapolated it to education. The conclusion that Dewey drew from the new psychology was that to put the child in possession of his fullest talents, education should be active rather than passive. That is, the child should not just sit and take in what the teacher is telling him. He should experiment and discover for himself. Teachers College at Columbia University became the instrument by which this blend of psychology and education was injected into America's schools. The first dean of Teachers College was James Earl Russell, a student of Wundt. Edward Lee Thorndike, another influential psychologist at Teachers College, believed that he could apply the same techniques that he used with chickens in the laboratory to children and youths. Thorndike defined teaching as the art of giving and withholding stimuli with the result of producing or preventing certain responses. Thorndike believed that drill and core information should be removed from curriculum. Why? Because drill and core information would protect the child from his experiments of withholding or giving stimuli. The child would have a foundation to discriminate and pick and choose what would be given to him as that programming. He said artificial exercises like drills on phonetics, multiplication tables, and formal writing movements are used to a wasteful degree. Subjects such as arithmetic, language, and history include content that is intrinsically of little value. Thorndike and his colleagues became the dominant force in American education. While parents and true educators slept, they moved in. Thorndike believed that high school was a place where people were educated as the common good requires. That meant that children with low IQs should not receive basic knowledge, but should be prepared for jobs. Thorndike argued that it is elitist and Anglo-centric to expect all students to master American history and English literature. I say that it's elitist and undemocratic to deny this information to all students. Thorndike's philosophy is at the heart of the educational debate today. Should students receive vocational training or cultural literacy? The answer is they must have both. If you want to doom someone to life at the bottom, just give him a little bit of vocational training and turn him loose on society. Our society is too complex for someone to just become a typewriter repairman and never learn anything else. He has to have the tools that he needs to master many different jobs, because jobs are changing. Teachers College, Columbia was not a major force until it received massive amounts of money from John D. Rockefeller. After that, it became the fourth largest graduate school in the country. By 1950, these progressive ideas were entrenched in virtually every school in America. Every school but the private schools reserved for the power elite. Another theory which was popular at the time was that the development of the whole child was what was important. This is the philosophy that each infant has an inborn instinctive tendency to follow its own proper development. This idea is a good one when properly used. We see its fulfillment in the work of Maria Montessori. But the idea of educating the whole child was perverted and used to get academics out of the curriculum and to get courses with fluff topics like comic book history into the classroom. The direct effect of progressive reforms was to muscle out the Montessori method. And this was to be the true educational method for the Aquarian age, commencing in the 20th century. This was the method God sent to us for the Aquarian age child. William H. Kilpatrick, one of Dewey's disciples, was responsible for the demise of the Montessori method in America. One individual in this chain of this false hierarchy of false educators. In 1914, Kilpatrick published an attack on her reading methods. He said that Montessori's emphasis on individuality precluded the social interaction stressed in American progressive theories. Individuality and the individualization of the God flame is what America has been all about since its founding. This is not acceptable to those who would exercise population control upon the people of this country. Children must become social animals rather than individuals in God. He also complained that under Montessori, children learned to read and write and figure too early. So as a result of his attack, by 1918, the Montessori method was seldom mentioned in the United States. Montessori's method gives us the means whereby the soul is harnessed to her inner teacher. The Montessori teacher guides and helps teach the child to use the equipment in the classroom at certain sensitive periods. When those sensitive periods are recognized by wise teachers, the child can be guided in that inner development and grow in grace and in stature and wax strong in that inner presence of the living Christ. The solutions being put forward by the education establishment today are nothing but the old progressive education in a new disguise. We are told that children need to learn to think creatively. These people are not creative. They don't know how to think creatively, but only wickedly, and therefore they don't know how to teach our children creativity. They say that children need to learn by doing, that children need to develop problem-solving skills. Of course they do. They always have to borrow truth to convince us that their ideas are correct. According to Bruce Goldberg of the American Federation of Teachers Union, we need to have children who are producers of knowledge instead of reproducers of knowledge. It's a nice cliche. It's true, but it's a half-truth at best. Gary Watts of the National Education Association, the country's primary teachers union, says, if you accept this concept, you immediately reject the idea of a teacher standing up in front of a classroom and lecturing or reading out of a book. And that's the other half of the half-truth. The Carnegie Council on Adolescent Development recommends cooperative learning as a way to help ensure success for all students. The idea is promoted heavily by the education establishment, notably Morton Deutsch, a professor at Teachers College, Columbia University. Well, there's nothing wrong with cooperative learning as long as it's seen as one piece of the educational puzzle. According to an article in the Phi Delta Pan, cooperative learning improves students' attitudes toward school, toward learning, and toward one another. Students from different ethnic and racial groups have been shown to be able to work productively and harmoniously in groups. These ideas are all well and good, as long as they are placed on a solid foundation of the student's mastery of a basic body of knowledge. The fact is that the education establishment doesn't believe in acquiring knowledge. As Chester Finn points out, few of our educators have much use for knowledge. American education is dominated by the conviction that it is not really important to know anything in particular. Facts are out. It's not surprising that the debate about what and how a child should learn is going on at this time in history. As the transition period from the Piscean to the Aquarian age, the 20th century has its own unique conflicts. We have to master Aquarius if we're going to prepare our children for life in the 21st century. The children coming into embodiment are Aquarians, introducing the Aquarian age. The sign of Aquarius is associated with freedom, revolution for good or ill, and technological and social innovation. It rules progress and the future. While Aquarius rules groups and group activity, it also gives the impulse to individuality. Those born under the sign of Aquarius are often highly original in their approach to matters. Aquarius rules the dissemination of ideas and information. In its negative expression, Aquarius can be expressed as tyranny or anarchy, rather than freedom. People with prominent Aquarian placings, sun, moon, rising, etc., can be eccentric, anarchic, and so out of step as to be useless. Aquarius is ruled by two planets, Uranus, which brings freedom and innovation, and Saturn, which brings order and limitation. Since the beginning of the 20th century, we've seen a tremendous amount of innovation in education. Today, schools range from totally free, where children can do whatever they want, to a rigid structure, for example, in Oriental countries. The schools with structure are successful in teaching the children what they need to know to succeed in the material world. But many Americans believe that such a structured education will stifle their children's creativity. They may have had bad experiences with demanding teachers. Bev Boz, a prominent advocate of totally unstructured preschools, says that they make children more creative. I have known people who have attended unstructured schools. They are definitely very creative. How much that was due to the school or to themselves, I cannot say. But I have also found that they lack some of the basic knowledge that they need to function. I know of some extremely creative persons on my staff and throughout this organization. But because they were not taught the basics, they cannot spell, they cannot properly read and write, and some of them have impediments in actual speech, in their pronunciation of words, or the formulation of sentences and ideas. They cannot use language to say what they mean, but to only say approximately or in general what they mean. Absence of communication skills, which are taught and practiced with exercise. These are the things that are missing. So what we see in the unstructured school is tremendously talented people who have tremendous and ingenious ideas, but they lack the undergirdings to make those ideas effective in society. How many people do I know that have grand business ideas or notions about how they're going to invest money and how they're going to accomplish this and how they're going to accomplish that? And how many do I see who fail because they do not have the real grounding that they should have gotten, even in kindergarten, that would have saved them from much of the folly of their wrong decision because they've never been taught decision making, right and wrong. Here's a problem. How do we solve it? What we need to do in the Aquarian age is to integrate Uranian freedom and Saturnian structure. Without Saturn's structure, Uranus freedom could well destroy life in the Aquarian age. That's what we're dealing with when we only extol freedom in our classrooms and not structure. It's time that we establish our own agenda for education. We need to have creative thinking, but it must be within the framework of self-discipline that comes both from within and from without. We cannot evolve our own life's philosophy, our own discipline, our own creativity without some assistance from without. That is the key. Life is a chain of a guru-chela relationship, master-disciple. Teacher passes on to pupil his expertise. Pupil adds to the expertise his own ingenuity, his own excellence, his own discipline, and bequeaths to his student a higher level of that which he received from his guru. Every student should exceed his teacher, and he can only do that if he respects his teacher and if the teacher is willing to literally pour himself into the vessel of his student. That is how civilization is carried forward. We can't have Uranus's freedom without Saturn's order. Without a foundation of knowledge based on rote and drill, we can't reach the sublime heights of creativity locked in our I am presence and in our causal body. My agenda for education starts at conception. Children can learn every moment they are in the womb. Select a piece of classical music. the symphonies of Beethoven or Mahler. Play them to the child in the womb. The child will become still and reverent. You can hear the child in the womb listening to that symphony. You can take headsets, adjust them carefully, and put them on mother's tummy. And that child will integrate with the tremendous geometry of that music and internalize that sound as the living word. And that symphony will become part of the inner foundations of his body, his psyche, his mind. That's why God gave us the 9 symphonies. They are for creation by the power of the 3 times 3. That's why we have the work of Mahler. At this seminar, you'll hear about the methods of Glenn Doman that you can use with your child from birth. They are wonderful. They're marvelous. You must have the joy of using them for your children or others' children. Maria Montessori showed us the true Aquarian way to bring out children's creative potential. At Montessori International, the school that Mark Prophet and I founded in 1970, children learn to read by age 3 or 4. They learn by an intensive phonics method that we have developed, especially for preschoolers. It's based on the Spalding method, which teaches reading, writing, and spelling to elementary age children and adults. Our children can write before they enter 1st grade. We have taken what has been given for elementary school children and adapted it to newborns and taken the littlest ones through that writing instruction. If you have children that are accelerated, you need an elementary school where they can continue on an advanced level and not lose those early gains. During elementary school, children should master the basic math, science, foreign language, and history that they will need throughout life. And because they have a head start on the basics, they can now spend time learning practical things. Here is my 12-point plan for American schools. 1. America, you need to adopt the philosophy that children should be learning from birth. Now that is rejected by conservatives and liberals alike. They think children shouldn't be taught anything until the 1st grade. We are fighting an uphill battle on this premise. And yet Mother Mary taught Jesus, Elizabeth taught John the Baptist, not just from birth, but from conception. Those children were learning, and that is how they became wise. That is how they pulled down the fullness of their causal body and their Christhood. They had divine mothers incarnate. Mother Mary and Elizabeth are those who have given to us and to Maria Montessori the methods that we use. This is the true way to educate the child. Preschools and daycare centers should teach reading, math, science, history, and foreign languages. Children absorb it like a sponge and give it back to you years later. 2. America, you need to institute school choice. Tax dollars should follow children into either public, private, or parochial schools, the choice of the parents and the child, not the state or the educationists. As an aside, let me caution you that you can't just put your child into any private school. Most private schools today have much lower standards than they should. They are only marginally better than public schools. That's because the competition isn't that heavy. Private schools would be forced to accelerate if we had choice in America because all schools would have to get tougher. But today my message on private schools is, let the buyer beware. You also have to be concerned about the heart quality of the teachers. When I discovered the Montessori method, the first thing I wanted to do is to put my son in a Montessori school, and I did. And after visiting the school and his attendance there for some time, I realized that it was the Montessori method in form, but not in heart, not in spirit. Simply because the teachers could give only what they could give. They couldn't give something they didn't have to give. The heart quality of the teacher is what quickens and awakens the heart of the child in the love of learning. That is when we decided to found our Montessori school. 3, we need to open the teaching profession to all who qualify in their field, and close it to all who have degrees in education and nothing else. Private schools can hire any teachers they want to hire. They don't have to come into conformity with the rules for public schools. In our school, I have always sought teachers who had mastered a certain discipline and could convey that body of knowledge, especially at the high school level, but also at all levels. 4, we need to agree on minimum basic standards for all schools. 5, we also need to set maximum standards that will make us competitive internationally. This will give children something to strive for. 6, we need to set a national standard of cultural literacy for every child. It should cover history, literature, geography, math, English, grammar, and science. Once students have mastered this common body of knowledge, they can specialize in their particular area. 7, children as young as first grade should be learning a trade after school. Instead of using their after-school time to get involved in promiscuity and drugs, rock music, they should work from the time school gets out until dinner time. A creative work under a tutor, under someone who does that work, working hand in hand with their parents in their business or with neighbors or friends that can allow them to watch and learn and have a sense of daily achievement in what they can produce with their hands. Education is the balance of the action of the heart, the head, and the hand. If these are not in balance, we have not educated the whole person. All children need this training, not just those who are going to college. They need the balance of the threefold flame. 8, children should volunteer as helpers in the community as soon as they are able, and taught the value of service and the value of giving of oneself and growing through that giving. 9, by 8th grade, every child should have the tools he needs to function in society. He can then begin a structured program of preparation, either for a job or for higher education. I support early graduation so that children can go on to college and get their studies behind them. So many children have an interruption in their college years and their graduate degrees simply because it's time to get married and raise a family, because they have been kept in high school so long and been held back in the real and true cycles of their development. 10, schools should implement innovative programs like creative thinking and cooperative learning only after students have mastered the basic skills, only after they have developed the concept of who they are, what are their values, what are their morals, what do they stand for. The mastery will give them the confidence to forge ahead as they build upon the body of knowledge that has come down to us through the millennia. This mastery must be had by children. Otherwise, they feel totally inferior to the authority figure in their life, their teacher. And they accept the teacher's values because they have not been allowed to develop their own under parental and church guidance. 11, we need to implement Maria Montessori's program for teenagers called Erdkinder. Erdkinder means earth children, or children of the land. Montessori said schools as they are today are adapted neither to the needs of adolescence nor to the times in which we live. She said that age 12 to 14 is marked by a decline in intellectual ability. It is a sensitive period for the establishment of nobility of character and personal dignity. Montessori designed the Erdkinder program to balance the hormones and restlessness that come at puberty. Children getting outdoors, one with the land, understanding what it takes to feed oneself and one's family and to earn one's daily bread. She believed that elementary schools should be so accelerated that by the time students reach age 12, they could actually take off a year or two from school to be involved in this type of work. They could work full-time on a farm. They would learn to sustain themselves with products from the land. They would also earn money by selling the products of the land. They would then be prepared to go on to high school when they reach a new sensitive period for keen study and learning and a sense of what they want to do in life. Erdkinder is designed to put education in touch with life and put the adolescent on the road to achieving economic independence. We need to take this principle and apply it to our particular circumstances in the 1990s. Wherever you live and wherever you are, your child needs this balance at that very delicate age. 12, we need European-style apprenticeship programs for those who are not college-bound. In Europe, older high school students apprentice 4 days a week in the trade of their choice. They learn under master craftsmen, those who are tops in their field. They spend 2 days a week in classes, learning the academic part of the trade. This is an efficient way of bridging the gap between school and the workplace, and God knows just how technical are the demands of the workplace today. I would like to give a realistic assessment for light bearers today. Since these reforms haven't taken place in our schools in America, you cannot just stand by and feed your child to the education mill or put him out to pasture. You have to do one of the following. Number one, you have to start your own school with other avant-garde parents. Or two, you have to homeschool your child. Teach your child at home. During the 1980s, more and more Americans decided to homeschool their children. Today, 250,000 to 500,000 children are taught at home. Homeschooling is legal in every state. Some parents use a package curriculum. Others create their own. Montessori International publishes a Golden Age standard curriculum that you can use as the basis of a homeschooling program. The curriculum includes a recommended textbook list and tells you where you can order them. The Colfax family is a well-known case of highly successful homeschooling. The family, which lives in Boonville, California, homeschooled their 4 sons. 3 of them are at Harvard. So first and foremost, I'm for you founding your own school. If you can't found your own school, and if you're working with a group of parents to get good schools, then you need to educate yourself to know what you should have in your school. And if you're going to have something to say about the school your child attends, most important is the reading program. Second is the math program. Third is to get the Montessori method combined with Doman and other good methods that we use into the kindergartens and preschools that you send your children to. If you can't find schools that will do this, that are run by teachers with heart, you have only one alternative: to homeschool your children. If you're going to homeschool children, then why not do so by combining forces with other parents in your community and do that homeschooling together. If you do homeschooling, you absolutely have to do it right. You can't think that all of a sudden, because you went to school, you automatically know how to teach your children. You have to learn something about teaching. In any case, I lean heavily in favor of homeschooling to protect the soul of the child, even on pain of that child not getting the best education. However, I don't believe that that child will not get the best education. If you only half try, you have got to be able to exceed what is currently going on in the public schools. Before God, the one thing that you cannot do you cannot do this with impunity, and that is to feed your children to the education mill. You simply can't do it. You came to this lecture, you got enlightenment. Knowledge is responsibility. If we don't start in the womb and in the first 7 years and train our children to know what it's really like to live on this planet in the real traditions of the real people who've lived and shaped the destiny of modern civilization here, they're going to be lost. Your goal with homeschooling should be to get your children through elementary school. You need to educate them in a wholesome environment away from promiscuity, drugs, and rock music. They need to be saying their prayers, saying the rosary, going to Sunday school. By the time children are 12 years old, if your children want to be in the world, then you should let them go out and learn their karmic lessons as they attend the best high school you can find. If you can keep your children in a wholesome environment through the age of 12, then you have set the foundation of their lives. Whatever they go out and do, they've had that grounding. I have seen some people try to create schools who have been impractical and not given their children the basics of reading, writing, and arithmetic, penmanship, geography, history, and those things that they have to know. That's why I'm saying that it's a big responsibility to open a school and to direct it. And you have to seek people who know what they are doing, preferably teachers who have become fed up with the public schools themselves and want to work with you. It's a serious responsibility. You have to test your children, make sure they're meeting and exceeding the national standards. As these children we saw on the screen today are 2 years ahead, this is our goal for Montessori International. 2 years ahead. They are fully capable of it. If more and more people exact that of children, we will see finally that the schools will catch up, and we will see that children can graduate from high school at 16 and not 18. That is very important, because that is a period in life when they can get the experience of working at a job, having been prepared for that trade by you in the right environment, getting into college, getting on with those 4 years, and going on to higher education or into their own businesses, etc. It's important then to see to it that we are meeting and beating all national averages. If we aren't, there is no point in having that homeschooling. I submit to you that there is no calling more important today than qualifying yourself to teach children from birth to age 7 and from age 7 to 12, to get them through the 6th grade and prepare them for the next step of their evolution. Those foundations that we give to children are the building blocks of civilization. Our civilization will move forward because we decide today that this is our highest calling, no matter where we are in a station of life. Find out what the rules are to open a daycare center in your area. Qualify yourself. Teach those children to read. Give them a head start. People from every race and ethnic background, you have descended from a certain karma of your people, wherever you have hailed from around the world. Unless we're full-blooded American Indians today, we've all come from somewhere else. And we have preceded the evolution of that nation, that race, that people. We must send back through the genetic chain of our point of origin this enlightenment, so that it can return to us in the people we are accountable to, our flesh and blood heritage, as a gift we can place upon the altar, that these people out of whom we have arisen to wherever we are today may find that education for the children incoming that will allow them to balance their karma and make their ascension. They can learn how to read as you make for them bits and other educational materials to learn their vocabulary, learn their phonics, learn to read so they can read themselves. The child who enters school knowing how to read can never be fooled by teachers who are programmed the wrong way. May you see your calling today and reach for it, because children who come after you will say, as Mother Mary said, "All generations shall call me blessed." May it be said of you. God bless you.
You have been watching The Coming Revolution in Higher Consciousness with Elizabeth Clare Prophet. The preceding